Welcome to this week's episode of The Perceptive Readers, a podcast series made in the Product of Culture, aka PocbooksCrypto's website's office. Hi, I'm James. This is a special Perceptive Readers podcast this week in hopes to help anyone who felt wronged, but no one never listened. Now, and I'm James Lynch, by the way. Now, the reason why I'm doing this podcast, it is hope to help anyone who may have been bullied, persons who maybe have tried to help them, psychologists and things of the like. And I want to share something with you because I do realize that with people experiences in life, some really do have them in a unique way where very few persons went through it so that they could actually put it down and lay it out as to this is what happens and this is the effect that it has on certain mindsets. And also to share with you that the elevated thinking of the good book really goes to show, the elevated thinking of the good book can even address even these unique situations. And sometimes either because of ignorance or even a lack of love, that if it's not applied, then guess what? You're just not going to get the results that you want, that you may sincerely desire. And that's the fact of the matter. That's why we have Jesus' words, because he addresses matters in ways. And then there are other books in the Bible, written from Paul that went on to go to show, as some people would say, well, if you didn't treat this person this way, then once again, what did you think was going to happen? Okay, now, starting with persons who have been bullied, persons who have been set up as a scapegoat, so to speak, practically all their life. Do you know what type of effect that has on the person? Well, what it has on a person is they've noticed that whenever it came time, most of the time, no matter what the situation was for, they always got blamed for it. Many times because of not being a popular crowd and things of that nature. And that's a fact. You can talk to psychologists about it and psychiatrists and other persons who realize and have dealt with such persons. Now, you may say again, what did they do wrong? See, that's my whole point. You don't know also what the person was enduring in their life, what was going on in their household, or anything, and that's another reason, as I talk about the elevated way of treating people, that's the reason why it has to be done, other than some of these mastermind concoction plans, to do this or that turns into experiments. Now, I'm going to tell you about this because, as I said before, there are people who do take up that very honorable role of trying to help others in these situations. And I've always said, again, I just admire such a spirit of such ones, those genuine spirit of such ones, and how they know they have to keep the balance. And I use the term of the Hippocratic oath that, doctors and healthcare workers take at time to say again that, they don't want to do no additional harm. And so that's why they listen to their patient. You see what I'm saying? And they try to prescribe the best method of helping them. Okay. And so there are ones, as I said before, that in their life, they really have noticed that once they were tagged the scapegoat, then there were even at times friendships and things of that nature, that the reason why they went so along with what the popular crowd, you see what I'm saying, was doing, was just because of the whole way that the circumstances and the situation and environment was actually set up around them, that even then they really were no longer going to get the intimacy, the type of help that really made the person their good or best friend in the first place. Because now, whether someone used their authority on your friend or not to cause them to have to, treat you in a certain way. Remember, persons who are empathetic, some people say empathic and stuff like that, they feel it. They feel it over time. It's like, so they just take what they can, but it still is not that same type of touch, that intimacy that they had at first, even though they may not have said it, because what? You start realizing, no, something is missing here. And sometimes, once again, what the person ends up realizing is that, no, this has now turned into, for some, more of a opportunity for the person now to just be looked at more like a case subject rather than just a friend or human being that could, really still just be helped by the very loving things and loving way that they did things at first to help them, you see. And so I want to share something else with you with being tagged the scapegoat. And this is another fact that sometimes people don't hear about. So I'm telling you, psychologists, this and stuff like that. Sometimes most of the time, remember, being a scapegoat, you get blamed for everything, even things that happen everywhere, over here, over there, and it's always your fault, and they'll make it your fault. So what do they end up using sometimes? Once again, lies, slander, and exaggeration. And so here you go again. Well, in this nature, it attracts even more people who would just end up being opportunists towards you. You see, opportunistic towards you. It's not as genuine as, some persons would say. And so normally people, in their establishing personal boundaries and things, and there's just a certain process or a way that they have to do things. When you agree, I'm sure you do this, all you reasonable listening persons to this podcast. You have every dignified and conscious right to set boundaries with the way that you get to know persons. And see, once again, depending on whether you of a certain class or not, that is acceptable. That is reasonable. But then if you get placed in this type of situation where, where a lot of persons get bullied and gang stalked and stuff like that, they take that away from you. So really you end up being in a catch-22 situation. And so you will find yourself at times, you will get blamed for things. You'll even take the blame for it. You see, you'll even know that certain arguments were started on purpose, even though you blew off all the many attempts beforehand, where you finally reacted in such a way that you may have then turned around and stripped that person of their dignity of what you said to them. So can it still really be discounted that for the longest time, persons were actually trying to egg you on in that way? See, when you're tagged as a scapegoat, then persons act like you don't deserve it. And they'll also, once again, leave out information. They'll leave out the information of all your attempts to, once again, make things right, do things right, even apologize in this way or that way. But as I said before, once a opportunistic spirit comes over a person, then they won't always report those actions of yours. Why? Because they're more just looking for now anything that basically is still covered under Jesus' ransom sacrifice to make a situation fit that you're no good person, even though you're very much still precious in God's eyes. And see, and something, I know I've been using this expression quite a bit here lately, but there are, once again, many things that will fall in the category of being worse to you. Well, all I'm going to say is, in this case, nothing worse is taking someone who is precious to God and putting them under the care under someone who is actually just going to be opportunistic. See, these things happen sometimes. That this is the reason why I want to encourage you, psychologists and people who are in these type of mental health fields, is this: never sacrifice the person, that precious mind, under your care in order to get good marks, in order to become, of high esteem. You see, in other words, to climb the corporate ladder, to speak. Keep that spirit in mind, that why did you pick this field in the first place? Was it, once again, just to make yourself elevated in money and fame and things of that nature? Most likely not. Now, once again, you appreciate the money because, remember, a worker is certainly worthy of their wage, you see. And you help somebody in that way. Oh, yeah. You should be able to eat well. You see what I'm saying? Get vacations and all sorts of things of that nature. You just want to always keep the spirit of what that type of role entails still. And you don't never want to fall into the opportunistic trap. You see, what happens again at times is, and this has happened, a cycle has been created with different persons at times. Once they get labeled this actually schemed out label, a plan to just make this person the ills of everything that's going on around and things of that nature, then from that point on, it's like the book of James mentioned, you murdered that person. You killed that person. You killed that person's reputation. All right. Now, the point is, the person still has God, you see, yet remember, these things are certainly not right. That would be in any field, and especially in the sanctuary. Sometimes persons will take anything that you have done, mistakes you have made, or what have you, and from that point on, like I said, once your reputation is thoroughly with mud on it or what have you, they'll continue just to want to keep on having you in the picture so that it actually just makes them look good, you see. And we know that isn't right. And see, and at that point, let's say if a person did wrong you, okay, and you told the person, you know, you wronged me, I'm upset with you or what have you. And you know, let's say the person say that they're sorry, or the person say, or don't say that they're sorry. Okay. What do you do at that point? See, you actually have a choice. And this is the example that one's, like I say, in the sanctuary actually set. You actually have a choice. You can apply first. You see what Jesus' words were saying in Matthew chapter 5, even Matthew chapter 18. You can also apply, you see, what Colossians talk about, just letting love cover over and things of that nature. Now, if that doesn't work for you, then does that still give you the right and authority to set up a schemed out vendetta to hurt that person? Not only, you know, for that day, but then to scheme out, scapegoat someone where you really have condemned that person to be affected by crimes committed against the person, not only crimes against humanity, those type of things, but then you have assault of different nature. See, these things can actually happen, and all because of, once again, the rift or disagreement that came between you two, which, for all you know, once again, God, his word, he said, vengeance is his. And so you could yield it to him. But if you don't, and I've explained this before, if you don't yield your wrath to God and you take it upon yourself, you actually do lose your right, your claim. You see what I'm saying? For certain processes and justice. You see what I'm saying? That could have been done in another matter. You really do. And here is why. Because God said, yield place to the wrath, to me. And then if you don't, I mean, now, see, there's an end quote from yield place of the wrath, you see. But then if you don't, what happens then? Well, there's another passage in Proverbs that just talk about do not be basically gloating over the downfall of another person, because God will hear it, and then you should be worried about turn around and then put all those plagues upon you. See, and that's what happens when persons go off on vendettas. They already taken that, no, I'm not relying on God. I'm going to hurt this individual. And then you put that individual that you were mad at or felt justified with complaint, you see, under now God's still safety net and care, because that person too, you'll find out, you know, in this day and age, that bullied person is also still precious in God's eyes. You see, it's precious in God's eyes. So you can always relate, once again, your feelings and things of that nature. But here's what, you know, I just want to say in closing is this. You know, it's kind of hard, for some anyway, to claim such a righteous stance. You see, saying that they want to do this for God or what have you, but then do and carry out so many crimes the so-called get that person, that they done lost their righteous standing. You see? That happens. And so you want to really keep in mind, as always, that if you just leave things in God's hands, you see, he will take care of matters in the way that, he's going to take care of them. And, and I found from personal experience, you don't have to concoct plots and schemes and stuff. What you still use, as I've always said, is your public declaration of defending your faith and defending your conscience and things of that nature. And you can use God's word. You can use the laws of the land and things of that nature. See, but all those things, according to God, you see, I keep using the word public declaration. It's not no scheming and things of that nature. No, you're making clear what you're doing, why you're doing it and things of that nature. Because one other item that is talked about, in this day and age, if you read the time period that we live in, about the unreasonableness of it all, excuse me, is that persons, once they really said, well, I got to totally rein in the way that I do my process of personal boundaries and things of that nature. If you don't abide by reasonable verification and things of that nature, you're still showing that no, you don't really want to resolve it. Maybe because of pride or what have you. It may be. But all the same, I always said that's these persons' options. That's their options if that's what they want to do or what have you. But all the same, know that you still have God who is viewing you as precious and actually knowing your situation. And I'm going to, at first I was going to stop, and I'm going to share one other thing with you because I just like to make this clear from time to time. How did they get there? How did they get there? There are certain even occupations today. And I told you there's prophecy that talks about some of these occupations as well, where, a persons have made very lucrative livings and they have been able to really, when it comes to personal boundaries and the way that they going to do things, it works for them and it has to work for them. And yet, because of their success, different people mention different things that these persons may have done in life and this and that. But this is what I'm going to share with you on how did they get there. I'm going to tell you how some of them got there. See, it's nice as people say there's a great awakening right now where people are hearing and understanding matters that they never did even think about. It didn't even cross their mind before that they're understanding now. But let me tell you what was happening while the majority of the world was asleep, mind you. I'll tell you what was happening. See, some of these persons who had that touch, God's spirit, if you will, the creativeness, the mind of God and the way of viewing things and what have you. These were the ones, many of them, these were the scapegoats. These were the ones who were the bullies, who were bullied from young ages and things of the nature. And so what did they end up doing? They realized after they saw enough times when they spoke up, how it was still oftentimes their fault or nobody was going to give them nothing because they see, as they've used the word this year again where they call it It was along the lines of describing mass hypnosis of the masses. Now, this doesn't mean everybody's walking around like a zombie, but they're still basically saying, the documentary on the Matrix is very much true on how people can be controlled and manipulated by propaganda and stuff of that nature. And so they learned these things. They really saw it for what it was. And so with the knowledge and what they were enduring at the time, they said, look, I got to do what I got to do, or I won't even be on this earth long. See, this is the type of situation persons get in, you see. And so the whole point is, the popularity, or sometimes they say the good old boys club and all this stuff like that, what have you, see, can really mess a person, up if they don't really know how to maneuver, such matters. But see, at the same time, as I told you, peer pressure has been used to such an extent at times that it even causes genuinely good people to allow atrocities to happen. Genuinely good people. And I'm here, and then again, it's stated, it's all in the interest of, you should just listen, or you should just obey, and this and that. And the point is, you don't know at times whether it's an opportunistic person telling you or not, and they're just, once again, misusing their authority. Now, granted, you have persons, I talk about in authority that as they get older, or what have you, they've always kept the right mindset. But then the ones that they have around them or under them, they relied heavily upon, tell me the truth of the matter. Tell me the fact of the matter. And because some in ignorance or had that opportunistic, spirit come over them, really wasn't making things clear. Now, let me say something again. I just talked about how did they get there, and I talked about creative people and things of the nature. There was one man, and some persons were wondering why, he had such a interest in, music or art, theater, and yes, even writing, you see, fictional books and things of that nature, you see. But you know what the man would say, you see, to just a very few, and I'm going to share this with you, is the point of the whole premise was, by actually engaging in these other activities of life and even writing about fiction, it keeps him honest. Or let me quote, it keeps me honest when it comes to all these other matters, like the spiritual matters. Okay, well, what you probably want to understand further about that. Well, here's the point. Recreation and relaxation, what does it do? It gives you an opportunity to recharge, does it not? And it gets you rest. So in other words, if you're feeling drained, you've been doing something for a month, 2 months, 3 months. And, some persons say, I've never had a vacation. Some persons say they've been working 7 days a week, longer than what they, wish they could without no break. How is that enjoying the fruits of their labor, as the scripture is calling it? But, to each his own. But see, here's the whole point. When you go on these different activities or engage in them, from gardening to running to listening to music to having a night on the town and stuff like that, it gets out all sorts of what people would call pent up energy, and in that way, in the right type of environment, and you're fine. Now, if that energy sometimes stays pent up in the mind and body, then what? It may come out in other areas. This is what I mean. During recreation environments and stuff, you do a lot of laughing and joking, right? But if you're in a situation like I described earlier, like psychologists and psychiatrists are in, where somebody, may be on your couch or what have you, as they listen, telling the problems, then you're just not going to use that time for joking and laughing, keeping in context what I'm talking about as far as the seriousness of the matter. And you're going to do, what is necessary in all seriousness. Is not going to be playtime for you. But see, one of the reasons why you're able to keep that type of seriousness and putting the import of what it should be on the situation is because you're balancing other areas of your life. And so along with that, this same person that I told you about, from time to time, you see, he would get asked to look into this situation or that situation. And guess what? Sometimes the situation would be, again, on some of the persons that have endured maybe, traumatic things in their life. Okay. And so because now these persons are dealing with this or that, you see, they sometimes just weren't the friendliest of people in the world, you see. And so at times, certain people just didn't like these ones. But anyway, this person had to, find out certain matters at times. Now, in one, report, he had wrote or explaining about a certain situation. And again, he just stuck to the facts of exactly this is what was said. This is what he said. This is what the other person said. You see, didn't, put his opinion with the matter or anything. And at one point, during, the conversation with the ones who wanted to know what was going on with this situation, they actually said a couple of statements that weren't accurate. Okay. One of the statements was basically being all built upon what was already heard from, other persons, which the person who was basically placed in charge of to find out had said, no, this wasn't the case when he had found out, when he talked with the person about this and that. And then it was something, because see, this is a technique used, and I can't remember what it was called before, where you'll be asked something and you'll get an answer, and then a little while will go by, and then they'll basically reword it and say it in another way just to see what you're going to say, to throw you off guard or to expose lying. Okay, see, now you're seeing why I'm telling you about their whole statement from 10, 20 minutes, 10, 15 minutes ago, where I said, the person said, see, it keeps them honest. Because this techniques basically was done on this man, where the statement coming back around was once again going to make the person who was, accused of certain things, look bad if the man was to say, yeah. No. When that statement came back around and made it, and was actually putting words in the person's mouth of saying, you said this person, and the person said, no, this is not what the person said. This is not what the person did or what happened. And then the person was asked, well, is there anything else? And then the person said, no. And then the person was asked, well, what do you think the situation is going to be, or your opinion or what could happen. And then the person just briefly said, well, what they thought on what would happen. It wasn't still being in the slanderous type of way or what have you. It was just saying that. Now, I'm stating that with you because basically what was related near the end of everything is that the person who was gathering the information or reporting to this other person who, really needed the information, that they were satisfied with the way the whole investigation, if you will, was done, and was glad that the person was straightforward, honest in the facts. You see, now, why did I just share all this with you again? To go to show you, you people who deal with mental health issues, actually help you in the honorary, honorable positions and stuff like that, is this. Sometimes, you see, you're placed in situations, and even the persons that ask you this, no matter how their demeanor may come off or what have you, they're not asking you these things because they want you to make up stuff all of a sudden. Whereas, I know, like I said, we talk about opportunistic type persons, but I'm not talking about that. Sometimes, once again, all they're doing is going through the process of making sure that they do get the accurate facts. And so if you don't agree with something that was just said because you know the facts, you are not being disobedient because you spoke up, even if it's for someone who's already been labeled as worthless, dregs of society, scapegoat, or what have you, gang stalker, what have you. That's not always the case. You will certainly have more of a higher view, if you will, of matters, and God sees it. It's not disobedience to actually state the truth of the matter, the facts of the matter. And so, with all that being said, this is why, one of the reasons the man said, all his other creative activities, if you will, keeps him honest. Thank you for being on this Perceptive Readers podcast this week with me. And I hope this helps somewhere. And for all who did not have feel they did not have the help when they were growing up, or otherwise suffered many things, God knows this. And I know in this world today, sometimes I feel like, man, there's just, from certain persons, they throw you away just like that. And yet, Jesus' ransom sacrifice covers you for the very things that humans will throw you away for. See, when you're sincere like that, that is the fact of the matter. How do we know? Who does the scripture say Jesus spent a lot of time with? You see, who he ate dinner with. Why did he eat dinner with those types of, once again, individuals and groups at times? You see, as I've always said before, Jesus know not only, you see, how they got there, but even, you see, why eternally they got there as well. And look how he was so ready to offer them mercy, you see. Thank you for being here again on the Perceptive Readers podcast. You have a very wonderful week, and you take good care of yourself, okay? You have just listened to the Perceptive Readers podcast. remember, until next time, if you read something that encourages you to improve or enhance your life for the better, it becomes your reality.